They believed in religious freedom. They believed that physics and metaphysics are just two ways of getting knowledge. And then what stopped all this? With the collapse of with the fall of the Roman Empire, and then the Dark Ages. By the way, the term Dark Ages is not just being politically incorrect. It was the people that created the Renaissance. That's the term they used, the Dark Ages. And so in the Dark Ages, you have religious fanaticism. You know, you can be killed if you don't join the right church. And there is no science. And then you start to get the Renaissance of this Greco-Roman culture, by the way. And then you start to get science again, and science, physics and metaphysics are partners. They're working together. They're just different fields of knowledge until you get to the Protestant Reformation, and then you get the rejection of science, the rejection of pagan philosophy, or philosophy in general. Anyway, it's a whole history. And you get the persecution of science, the trial of Galileo, who he made two mistakes. He disagreed with the church, and also apparently he was an extremely obnoxious person. But anyway, so you get the trial of Galileo. The scientists don't tell you that. And so you get this battle between science and religion. Of course, religion controls everything. The churches have power. And finally, you get you get all these revolutions: scientific revolution, political revolutions, French Revolution, American Revolution, religious freedom. You get the rise of secularism, and the secularists, the materialists, take over the universities. So when the church controlled all the universities, and they created the universities 1,000 years ago, they controlled them all. So if you didn't belong to the right church, you couldn't get a job in a university. And then when the secularists took over the universities, it was payback time. So if you were religious, you couldn't get a job in a university. And so all this nonsense is going on back and forth for centuries. And what I'm proposing, why don't we just go back to sanity and just recognize that physics and metaphysics are two ways to get reliable, important knowledge about the world. And we need a spiritual science. We need a material science. And we need to do that. So that's basically what I wanted to say. And so I'll stop there. Now, if you have any questions, try to address your questions. Sudden, unexpected ending. Left everyone speechless. Yes?
Can you elaborate on spiritual science?
Elaborate on spiritual science?
Yeah.
Well, to you as an individual, if you're practicing what somebody else claims to be a spiritual science, then you have to get results that convince you that you are really practicing a spiritual science. And so what are the elements of any science? You have to have a theory or a philosophy. You have to have a method to confirm it. And so, for example, in Krishna consciousness, Bhagavad Gita, and so on, we have, just to use neutral language here, we have a theory. We don't think it's a theory. We think it's a true description of reality, at least part of reality. But for the sake of neutral discussion, you could say we have a theory. And then we have a process which we claim will confirm that theory. And so if the theory itself, the philosophy itself, if it's coherent, it doesn't contradict itself, it's not just too bizarre. Like, what if someone says, I have an internally consistent philosophy that the world was created by the divine pineapple that sits in the sky, shedding invisible juice that then travels across space, enters into our minds and bodies, and gives us the gift of life. So, yeah, you could say there's nothing internally contradictory there, but it's very bizarre. So let's say a particular philosophy is not just like too bizarre, and it doesn't contradict itself, and also it has to be complete. In other words, just as science, empirical science can't explain the metaphysical dimension of reality, So a candidate for spiritual truth should explain things, should explain the world. And of course, not claim to explain what it can't really explain. You can say, well, if your holy book explains everything, who's going to win the horse race tomorrow? And so, there are limitations. And then you have to practice it and Krishna says, pratyaksha-avagamam, that this process leads to understanding by direct perception. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about knowledge as seeing. Not just knowledge in the sense you memorize something and then take a test, but serious knowledge, deep understanding. Krishna always talks about it as seeing. You see the truth. So I would say you have to be intellectually satisfied. You have to be experientially satisfied. You have to see that you are actually perceiving, experiencing a spiritual realm, and that in your own life you are coming to a higher state of consciousness. You are becoming free from attachments which do not help you and even harm you and are irrational. I mean, all of us, there are certain things in our life we wish we didn't do, but we do them. Or there are certain things we wish we did and we don't do them. Sometimes people, get into relationships which they know are going to be miserable, and sure enough. So the power to always act upon your best understanding, your best intelligence, that power is something which should come to you by spiritual practice. So in all those ways, ultimately, you have to confirm to yourself that you are, in fact, engaged in a spiritual science. Anything else? Going. Okay. Thank you all very much, and it was a pleasure to be here with you.
So there's going to be dinner, and maybe some calories will